Hello, my name is Rabbi Abram Goodstein in congregations at Shalom in Anchorage, Alaska, and I gave this sermon on July 16th. This week, we move into our last book of the Torah, Deuteronomy. With that in mind, I have two stories to tell you. In the first story, Moses receives all of the laws of God, whether it be written, as in the Torah, or received orally, as it says in the Midrash, the Mishnah, and the Talmud. Moses takes what he learns on the road with him as the Israelites wander the Sinai for 40 years, and after overcoming their journey, countless battles, plagues, starvation, and constant whining, they finally make it to the border of Canaan. And Moses knows he can't join the rest of the Israelites as they enter the land. So much like a parent parting with their child who is going to college, which is a day that I personally dread, Moses, on the border of Canaan, imparts some of the lessons he learned from Adonai, from Mount Sinai. And we call Moses' wisdom the book of Deuteronomy, which means second law. This whole book is essentially one big sermon by Moses. He gives them an updated law code, he reminds the Israelites of their covenant with God, and he retells their story from when they escaped from Egypt until they come to this very point. Okay, so that's the first story. The second story is about a young man who was king of Judah from around 640 to 609 BCE, named King Josiah. This is a difficult time for the Israelites. The destruction of the northern kingdom by the Assyrians is still fresh in everyone's memory. The Assyrians continue to be a massive power and influence, making their way towards Judah. And many of the surviving Israelites attempt to appease the Assyrians by worshiping the Assyrian gods and practicing the Assyrian religion. So King Josiah must protect his border not only from outside armies, but also from outside influences. And one day, while piously trying to refurbish the temple, he comes across a book of laws that apparently had been lost. Upon finding this book, King Josiah immediately decided to reform the religious practices in Judah. And since the kingdom of Judah is a religious state, this equated to both political and judicial reform. King Josiah updated the laws of Judah to make them more relevant and to centralize worship practices. For example, people couldn't offer sacrifices at high places throughout Israel anymore. They were restricted to making offerings just at Jerusalem. Furthermore, this book provided King Josiah the tools he needed to prevent the Assyrians from influencing Israelites who are practicing idolatry. And I bet you can guess what the book that King Josiah found, the book of Deuteronomy. Okay, so we have two different origin stories, two different time periods, and different applications for the same book. And next we're going to look at some parts of this week's Torah portion and see if this book works for both a new generation of Israelites poised to enter the land of Canaan and a king trying to reform the religious, political, and judicial practices of his kingdom. So Deuteronomy starts out by reminding the Israelites that right as they left Egypt, Moses took all the wise and capable people and appointed them as the representatives of Israelites. And he gave them some judicial authority, making them magistrates. Deuteronomy continues on how Moses demanded that these magistrates are to be impartial in their rulings and fair to each individual, no matter their status in society. And Moses reminds the Israelites how he instructed these magistrates to never be intimidated, because judgment is ultimately God's. You can see how these verses have two uses for both stories. Moses is designing a judicial system for when the Israelites settled the land of Canaan. And you can also see how King Josiah would benefit by showing that his new judicial system is derived from Moses' system and is just as fair and honest as Moses claims. Next, the book of Deuteronomy recounts the story of the first time the Israelites reached the Canaanite border, and that the people asked Moses to send scouts to see if they could easily retake the land. When the scouts came back, all but Caleb and Joshua gave unfavorable reports and convinced the Israelites to fear the inhabitants of Canaan. In the book of Deuteronomy, Moses reminds the Israelites what happens when they doubt Adonai's authority. And Adonai grew very angry and punished the Israelites by not letting that generation into Canaan. But, says the book of Deuteronomy, as long as this generation trusts Adonai, Adonai will protect the Israelites. We can see from this passage how King Josiah would benefit reminding his subjects to trust Adonai. This passage serves as a reminder to the Israelites what happened if they commit idolatry by worshiping Assyrian gods. King Josiah centralizes the Israelite worship through a retelling of this story. And one final example to examine in this week's portion is the beginning of chapter 2, when the book of Deuteronomy reminds the Israelites that Moses warned them about battling against the Edomites, Moabites, and the Ammonites. Moses claimed that all three ethnic groups were promised the land that they resided. Adonai promised Esau the land of Edom, and Lot the land of Moab and Ammon. In King Josiah's time, this is an especially interesting comment in Deuteronomy. These areas were subjugated by Solomon, and during King Josiah's reign, the Edomites, the Moabites, and the Ammonites are technically subjects of his kingdom. Deuteronomy is helping King Josiah maintain alliances with these three ethnic groups. And so I want to step back and look at our method in understanding the book of Deuteronomy this week. What I did was show two possible agendas from one narrative. The first agenda is Moses reminding a new generation of Israelites to trust Adonai. And the other agenda is King Josiah instituting a series of new laws based on the authority of a sacred book found in the temple. It's just amazing that the book of Deuteronomy can fulfill two agendas at the same time. Thank you.